I thought I'd prepared myself for every kind of heartbreak a parent could face. I'd lived through sleepless nights, hospital visits, scraped knees, broken hearts, all theirs, never mine. I worked myself into the ground so my kids could have everything I never did. And I mean everything. But nothing, not death, not distance, not even years of sacrifice, could have prepared me for the day they looked me in the eye and said, "You owe us more." Those 4 words didn't just sting. They hollowed me out. It was a Sunday, the kind of day I used to live for. My kids, their spouses, my grandkids all under one roof. The smell of roast chicken filled the kitchen, the kind my wife used to make when she wanted the whole family together. I watched the little ones play on the rug, laughing in that pure, untouchable way only children can. For a moment, I felt like the richest man in the world. Then my son cleared his throat. "Dad, we need to talk," he said, glancing at his sister across the table. I knew that tone. It wasn't casual, and it wasn't good. My daughter shifted in her seat, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee cup. My son leaned forward, elbows on the table. "We've been talking, and we think it's time you help us out a little more." I frowned, thinking he meant babysitting or maybe helping with a home repair. "Help you how?" My daughter jumped in. "Financially. You've got savings, the house, investments. We've got kids to raise, mortgages, bills. We think it makes sense for you to share more now instead of later." I stared at them. I waited for someone to smile, to laugh, and say it was a joke. No one did. "More?" I finally said. "After everything I've already given you, college tuition, down payments, the loan I never asked you to pay back." My son interrupted, his tone calm but sharp. "Dad, you worked your whole life to make sure we'd be okay. Well, we're not okay. You've got more than you need. We're just asking for what's fair." What's fair? That word lodged itself in my chest like a splinter. I looked at the 2 people I'd sacrificed my youth for, who never knew the taste of going without, and all I could think was, I never thought I'd have to justify keeping what I earned. My daughter set her coffee down with a quiet clink. "It's not like you're going to be around forever," she said softly, almost like she thought it would hurt less as she lowered her voice. "Why not let us benefit now, while you can watch us enjoy it?" The room felt smaller, hotter. My heart was pounding so loud I could barely hear the kids laughing in the background. I managed to swallow the knot in my throat and said, "I'll think about it." I smiled, but it felt like my face might crack under the strain. That night, when the house was empty and the dishes were stacked in the sink, I sat at the kitchen table staring at my hands. They looked older than I remembered. Scarred from years of work, stiff from the cold. These hands built everything I had, and now my children thought they had the right to take it before I was even gone. Sleep didn't come easy. I lay there replaying the conversation, hearing the matter-of-fact way they'd said, "You owe us more." Like it wasn't a request. Like it was a debt I'd failed to pay. For days, I kept it to myself. I didn't tell George next door. I didn't tell Emily at the youth center. It sat in me like a stone, heavy, unmoving, grinding against the parts of me that still wanted to defend them. But then something started to change. The more I thought about it, the more I realized I'd been giving to them my whole life. Not just money, my time, my energy, my love. And somewhere along the line, they'd stopped seeing it as a gift and started seeing it as a given. That's when the idea first took root. A small, quiet thought that grew louder every day. What if I gave it all away? To people who actually valued it. The idea wouldn't leave me alone. It followed me through the grocery store, lingered while I was fixing the hinge on the back door, and kept me company in the long, empty hours of the night. Give it all away. The more I thought about it, the more it stopped feeling like revenge and started feeling like freedom. I began by making a list. Not of assets. I already knew what I had. but of people and places that had actually been there for me. The youth center where I'd spent weekends fixing leaky faucets and teaching kids to play chess. George, my neighbor, who'd shown up with soup when I caught the flu and shoveled my driveway without being asked. The small animal shelter down the road that always struggled to keep the lights on. I imagined what my savings could do for them. How the workshop in my garage, full of tools I'd collected over a lifetime, could be put to use instead of gathering dust. How the land I owned could become a community garden, a place for people to gather and grow something real. I contacted my lawyer. We met in his quiet office, surrounded by the smell of leather and old paper. I want to make changes to my will, I told him. He looked at me over his glasses, cautious. Significant changes? I nodded. Very significant. We went through everything, line by line. Every property, every account, every last scrap of value. With each stroke of the pen, I felt lighter. The weight I'd been carrying, the expectation, the unspoken obligation, was starting to lift. The lawyer paused at one point and said, "You understand this will cause waves." I smiled, not unkindly. Good. Maybe some waves need to be made. I didn't tell my kids. Not yet. I wanted the truth to land without me having to defend it. Let the decision stand on its own. In a way, I wanted them to see it through the eyes of someone who wasn't me, to realize what they'd taken for granted without me there to soften it. Over the next few weeks, I went about my life as usual. Sunday dinners still happened, but I noticed more than before, the way their eyes flicked toward the nicer things I owned, the way conversations circled back to planning for the future and making sure things are in the right hands. They weren't talking about my hands. I spent more time at the youth center. The kids there didn't know about my bank account. They only knew me as Mr. G, the guy who showed up, fixed what was broken, and told the occasional bad joke. They didn't expect anything from me except my time, and somehow that made me want to give them more than anyone else ever had. One night, Emily from the center asked me why I looked so content lately. I told her I was making plans. Good plans? She asked. The best, I said, and meant it. By the time the legal work was finished, everything was set. My house would be sold, with proceeds going to the youth center and the shelter. My savings would be split between a few charities and George, who had never once asked me for a dime. The rest, auctioned off, with the money going toward scholarships for kids who couldn't afford college. It was done. No turning back. I didn't feel guilt. I felt clean. Like I'd been carrying a coat I didn't realize was soaked through, and finally set it down. The reveal came sooner than I'd planned. My son called me one afternoon, his voice casual but probing. "Hey, Dad, I heard from someone at the town office that you've been making changes. What's going on?" I played it off. "Just making sure my affairs are in order." There was a pause. "And?" he pressed. "And nothing," I said. "It's all taken care of." But I knew he wouldn't stop there. And I knew, deep down, the real discovery would come when I wasn't the one telling him. It happened on a Saturday morning. I was fixing a loose step on the porch when George walked over, hands shoved in his jacket pockets. "You might want to brace yourself," he said, half smiling, half wincing. "Ran into your son at the hardware store. Looks like he knows." I straightened up, feeling the weight of the hammer in my hand. "Knows what exactly?" George hesitated. "Everything. The will, the donations, who's getting what. He heard it from Martin. You know, the guy on the town council who volunteers at the shelter." I nodded slowly. This was it. The moment I'd been both dreading and preparing for. I thanked George, set the hammer down, and went inside. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. "Dad," my son's voice was sharp, each word clipped. "Is it true you're giving everything away? To strangers? To charities? To George." I sat at the kitchen table, staring out the window at the bare trees swaying in the wind. "It's true," I said evenly. There was a long pause, then an explosion. "Are you kidding me? After everything we've done for you?" I cut him off. "Everything you've done for me? Son, you've taken more than you've ever given." "That's not fair," he shot back. "We're family. Family takes care of each other." I felt something inside me harden, but my voice stayed calm. Family shows up. Family respects what's given. Family doesn't treat someone's life's work like a pie to be cut before it's even out of the oven. He was breathing hard now, like he'd been running. "Do you have any idea how this looks? People are talking. They think we did something wrong." I almost laughed at the irony. "Maybe you should think about why that is," I said quietly. By the time he hung up, I knew he'd be calling his sister. Sure enough, a few hours later, she showed up at my door. No grandkids in tow this time. Just her, arms folded tight across her chest. "Dad, you can't be serious," she started without so much as a hello. "Giving it all away? To other people? Don't you care what happens to us?" I let her words hang in the air for a moment. "Do you care what happens to me?" I asked. She blinked, caught off guard. "Of course I do. When's the last time you came over just to talk? When's the last time you asked how I was without it leading to a request?" My tone wasn't angry, just tired. Her eyes flickered, and for a second, I thought I saw the truth sink in. But it passed as quickly as it came. "It's still wrong, Dad. You're our father. That money should stay in the family." I shook my head slowly. "The people I'm leaving it to are my family. They're the ones who've been here, the ones who call, the ones who show up." She stood there for a long moment, her jaw tight, eyes wet but defiant. Then she turned and left without another word. The house felt quieter than usual after she was gone. Not the peaceful quiet of an empty Sunday morning, but the kind that settles in after a storm. Heavy, still, waiting for the next gust of wind to stir it up again. For a few days, there was silence. No phone calls. No knocks at the door. I thought maybe they decided to let it go, but deep down, I knew it was just the calm before the next wave. Sure enough, on the fourth day, I got a long text from my son. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't even an attempt to understand. It was a list, point by point, of all the ways he felt I'd failed my duty as a father by giving my assets away. I read it twice, not because I needed to, but because I wanted to see if I'd missed anything human beneath the accusations. There wasn't. Just entitlement wrapped in self-pity. I didn't reply. Later that week, Emily from the youth center dropped by to return a book I'd lent her. She sat at my kitchen table, sipping tea, while I told her, in the most neutral terms I could, about the fallout. She listened quietly, then said something I hadn't thought about before. "You know, sometimes the people who've had the most given to them end up appreciating it the least. It's the ones who've had to fight for every scrap who understand value." Her words stayed with me. They reminded me of the kids at the center, how they lit up when they got something as small as a new basketball, how they said thank you for things most adults take for granted. It hit me then. Maybe I hadn't failed as a father. Maybe I'd just been trying to plant seeds in soil that didn't want to grow anything. The following Sunday, I skipped the usual family lunch. I didn't announce it, didn't explain. I went to the youth center instead. We set up a barbecue in the parking lot, music playing from someone's old speaker, kids running around with plates piled high with food. When the sun started to dip, I looked around and realized this felt like family too. 2 weeks later, my daughter called. Her voice was cooler than usual, but not icy. "Dad, can we talk?" I said yes, and she came over the next evening. We sat on the porch, watching the light fade. She started slowly. "I still don't agree with what you're doing, but I guess it's your choice." It wasn't an apology, but it was closer to acceptance than I'd expected. I told her I understood she was hurt. but that my decision wasn't about punishing them. It's about making sure what I've worked for goes to people who will carry it forward, not just cash it out. She nodded, eyes fixed on the horizon. I just hope one day you'll see us differently. I didn't say it out loud, but I thought, I hope one day you'll see me differently too. My son, on the other hand, stayed silent. No calls, no texts. The only updates I got about him were from mutual acquaintances in town. Each time, it reminded me of how distance isn't always measured in miles. Still, I found myself less heavy than before. The confrontation, as painful as it had been, had stripped away the illusion. Now I knew exactly where I stood, and there was a strange kind of peace in that. Autumn came, painting the trees in gold and crimson. The air turned crisp, and with it came the kind of quiet that makes you reflect whether you want to or not. I spent more time in the garden, more time at the youth center, and less time thinking about when, or if, my kids would call. One afternoon, Emily handed me an envelope at the center. It came to the office, but it's for you, she said. Inside was an invitation to a town fundraiser, hosted by the very shelter I'd included in my will. My name was listed on the program under major benefactors. I hadn't expected that. The night of the event, I sat near the back, listening to stories from people whose lives had been changed by the shelter. A young man spoke about getting off the streets, finding a job, and finally feeling like he belonged somewhere. We couldn't have done it without the generosity of people who believe in us, he said, looking out into the crowd. I felt my chest tighten, in the good way. Halfway through the evening, I heard a voice behind me. Dad? I turned to see my son, standing there in a suit that didn't quite fit, his eyes darting around the room. I didn't know you were involved with this, he said, almost accusingly. I gestured to the stage. You do now. We didn't talk much that night. He left early, muttering something about having plans. But I noticed the way he looked at the people thanking me, like he was seeing a part of my life he'd never cared to look at before. A month later, my daughter stopped by. She brought pie, her way of softening conversations she didn't want to have. We sat in the kitchen, and after a while she said, I heard from someone at the shelter about what you did, what you're still doing. Her voice wasn't angry this time. It was softer. I guess I didn't realize how much this meant to you. It means a lot, I said simply, because they appreciate it, and because it matters beyond me. She nodded slowly, eyes on her coffee cup. I still wish things were different. So do I admitted, and we left it there. Winter arrived, and with it, another quiet holiday. No big family dinner, no clinking glasses, no chaotic laughter of kids tearing open presents in my living room. But there was warmth anyway, the warmth of knowing I'd chosen to put my life's work where it would live on, where it would matter. On New Year's Day, I walked to the garden plot the youth center had started with part of my donation. It was empty now, sleeping under a blanket of frost. But I could see it in my mind, the rows of vegetables, the kids learning to grow food, the laughter. That was my legacy. As I stood there, I realized something. My kids might never understand my decision. They might never forgive it. But they'd been given their chances, more than once, to show me they valued more than what I could give them. And they chose not to. I walked home with the cold wind at my back and a strange lightness in my chest. For the first time in years, I wasn't carrying the weight of their expectations. I'd set it down, and I had no desire to pick it up again. Because in the end, love is not about handing over everything you have. Sometimes, love is about leaving the door open, and making peace with the fact that not everyone will walk through it. And if the day ever comes when they do, I'll be here. But until then, my porch light will stay on for those who already knock.